To you today that there's some folks out there that have spent more time riding around from store to store looking for toilet paper than they have spending time in prayer and seeking God and trying to get their heart and their soul right with the Lord. As a matter of fact, there's some people who don't even care about God one bit. All they care about is where their next meal is going to come from. Well, let me tell you something. When God starts to touch these systems that have provided for us, and he starts to touch the food and the clothing and the whatnots, then he says, is not life more than food and clothing? What is there? There is God. And we need to make sure that we are walking in a right relationship with him. And what happens when the systems fail us? You know, in America, we haven't had to deal with things like this. We don't live in a communist country. We don't live in a socialistic environment. But I've watched some of the video clips of what's happened in Venezuela when all of a sudden the system they had in place of socialism failed them, and the panic mode that people have fallen into when all of a sudden the government can't provide for them. And you see the panic and you see the fear in people when the grocery stores are empty and they're trying to get out of that country. They're trying to go somewhere else. You see, we need to realize that our faith needs to be in an unchanging God. Amen? The good news is this. And church, this is not the end. Not to say that we are not living in the last days, but I believe that this is a wake-up call. This is a wake-up call so that we can start asking the questions, what if? And where am I at in regards to my relationship with God? You see, I believe with all my heart that in this global wake-up call, God is going to bring us through this season. I'm completely and totally 100% confident of that. But this particular season has the world's attention everywhere. And we realize how volatile we are. We realize how weak we are. And we realize how unpredictable the world's environment is and how quickly things can change around us on a global scale. The Bible talks a lot about the last days, and I'd like to draw your attention for just a moment to a chapter in the Bible. It's Luke chapter 21, and I won't take time to read through that whole chapter, but I will just summarize some of the things that are found in that chapter. And in that chapter, it actually prophesied the fall of Jerusalem over 1900 years ago, or Israel, where they would lose their nation and they would be scattered around the world. And then, of course, the Bible also prophesied that it would come back again and they would receive their nation. That happened in 1948. The Bible prophesied world wars that would take place, and we've seen that happen. The Bible prophesied the rise of false Christ and false religions, and there have been so many of them that have gotten away from the truth. The Bible prophesied earthquakes, famines, persecution, tears on the earth, betrayal that would take place among family and those who would put you to death for your faith. And then we come to Luke chapter 21, verses 25 through 27. And I'd like to read those words for you because I believe this is the moment that we are living in today, right now. The Bible prophesied it to us. Jesus talked about it 2,000 years ago. He said, there will be signs in the sun and moon and stars, and on the earth, dismay among nations in perplexity. At the roaring of the sea and the waves, men fainting from fear and the expectation of the things which are coming upon the world. For the powers of the heavens will be shaken. Then they will see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and great glory. Notice what Jewish holidays, unlike any other time for the last 500 years. And so when this lunar eclipse has taken place, We've looked at our moon and we've said it has changed color. It's a red color, and we have called it a blood moon. Many believe that was the fulfillment of Joel's prophecy found in the book of Joel, chapter 2 and 31, that says, the sun will be turned into darkness and the moon into blood before that great and awesome day of the Lord's coming. Could it be that we have witnessed in our generation with these 4 blood moons what Joel talked about over 700 years before Jesus even came? He described events in the last days that the moon would turn a blood red. Well, let's continue to go on. Not only did Jesus tell us about this, there would be signs in the sun and the moon and the stars and on the earth. He said there would be dismay among nations. They would be in perplexity. Now, I just did a little word study on that word dismay among nations. What does that mean? And the dictionary actually said the word dismay is distress caused by something unexpected, to be at a loss as to how to deal with something that confounds or shocks. And church, overnight, nations have been thrown into dismay. This was unexpected. And then all of a sudden, we're at a loss. How do we deal with this? And so governments are shutting everything down. They're encouraging people stay in your homes. They're stopping businesses and everything else. We have literally been thrown globally into confusion, and some people into quarantine and everything else. This is not something personal. The Bible said that this would be global, that it would be dismay among all nations. And you think about it just for a moment. Civilized man as we know him today has been on the earth for about 6,000 years. But there's really never been a time in history when we could know globally what's happening around the world as we know today. Because in the age of this technology, we can tell you what happens in China instantaneously. But 100 years ago, 200 years ago, 500 years ago, that wouldn't be possible. But we have the technology in place today. Why, you'd have had to get on a boat and travel across the ocean to tell the rest of the world what was going on. But we can know today that this is a